Hi. Oh my god. You can keep your face. Hi, welcome back. Sarah here. I'm here with my friend Kady.
Hi guys, I'm back.
We're hanging out today and it's so funny. Look at that. Only my mouth on the camera.
Hi guys, I have a hair.
Kady has a wonderful collection of Vietnamese decks from Vietnam. So I wanted to do a quick show and tell of Kady's Vietnamese deck collection. So let's start with this one here.
I feel so honored to be starting this walkthrough with this deck right here. So this is the Tarottube. This was my first deck that I got from Vietnam.
The box has been through some stuff.
It's been through some stuff. This tarot deck is based on Truyện Kiều, which is also known as Tale of Kiều. This deck was what helped me get into ancestral work. It's based on the epic poem that my grandfather used to read to me as a child. So my grandfather has actually memorized passages of Truyện Kiều, and when I was a child, he actually read me passages and sang them kind of like lullabies when I was like a baby. So being able to have this into tarot form and to read this whenever I do ancestor work, it's very full circle for me. I also bought it from a gift shop in Saigon in District 3, and that was actually where I met a good friend of mine. Her name is Nya, and she's a graphic designer based in Saigon. But when I met her 2 years ago, she was working in retail at this gift shop.
Typical Kady that you make friends even in other countries.
Aw, thank you, Sarah.
Kady really is one of those people who just makes friends everywhere she goes. I joke that she could make friends with a rock if she like had enough time to break that rock's shell.
Yeah. So as you guys can see from like these cards right here, there's like little lines from Tale of Kiều on these cards. So basically each of the 78 cards, they take like a couple lines from this epic poem and they bring the scene kind of to life in these cards.
Was this one of your first ones, or did you already have a bunch of other English tarot decks before you got this one?
In my general collection, I already had a pretty established collection of other decks before getting this one. In 2022, I already had a pretty established collection from just like doing tarot for about like 2 years by that time. So
this was your first Vietnamese deck at the time.
This was my first Vietnamese deck. This is like my first deck from Vietnam.
How special.
Yeah.
And I guess as we can see, this one has been through a lot.
I know, the poor box. So the guidebook has modern interpretations of the old Vietnamese, like on the cards. Thankfully, the description here of each card, it is like written in modern Vietnamese. The lines.
But the lines on the cards themselves are of the old Vietnamese poem.
Yeah,
I see,
exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the Tarottube. Okay, the next Vietnamese deck that you got was
the Quên Tarot.
The Quên Tarot. Okay. Thank you for letting me unbox your decks.
Oh, yeah, no,
I guess you just do the talking, I'll do all the handling.
Oh, what's special about this one is, I'll show you guys, there's like 5 Fool's cards in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 5 Fools. Okay, I'll show you guys like my favorite one. My favorite one is this one right here. So this Fool is actually standing in front of Sword Lake. You can tell because of this turtle tower.
We doing our best out here. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I think it's probably my favorite Fool card in general because I just love how you see this person wearing an ao dai and a nong la in front of like Sword Lake. It's just a very Vietnamese interpretation of like the Fool, and I think this was what really wanted me to like buy this deck. This was one of the decks I got from my mom's friend. So essentially it was shipped from the store in Saigon to my mom's friend's house in Saigon. My mother's other friend from Southern California visited Vietnam and met up with this friend. And then when they met up, basically the card was handed over to my mother's friend based in Southern California. And then they came back and met up with me and gave it to me that way.
The medium that this deck was created with, it's very hand-drawn. It's not like done with Procreate or digital tools.
Yeah.
So that already makes this deck really unique in my opinion. So that is the Quên Tarot coming from Vietnam.
Yeah. This deck did have a Kickstarter, and it was a quite successful Kickstarter. Even though I didn't get it from like the indie Kickstarter space, it's still one of my favorite decks. And I'm glad I was able to support like an independent artist.
Yeah, we love Kickstarter and independent artists. All right, so this is the third Vietnamese deck that Kady got. This is the Măm Tarot. And I recognize this deck because Kady gifted me a copy of the Măm Tarot from her most recent trip to Vietnam.
Yeah, you had this one too, Sarah. What do you think about using the Măm Tarot so far?
I also used it once for like an ancestor-related reading, and because I was inspired by you, Kady, and I thought that was like actually really poignant. It's really cool to learn about the different foods in this deck. You want me to shuffle? Oh my god!
Oh my god! The cards want to come out already.
Wait, how do you shuffle this round deck?
Dude, here I'll. I think I just like shuffle it like this. Let me do a poll for today. What is going to be the energy of today's Tarot Friendsgiving? Okay, the card. I'm gonna wait for a card to like come out. I'm gonna do this card. So the card for today's Friendsgiving is
Bok Page of Wands. For quick context of this deck is based all around Vietnamese cuisine, Vietnamese dishes. So it is really amazing to see the variety of dishes that are in Vietnam. Without looking at the guidebook, from the top of your head, and or from what you see the picture, what does this mean? Page of Wands, Bok Jing, what are you seeing here?
Our Tarot Friendsgiving today is gonna be a very carby, delicious meal. It's going to be a lot of really great company today. Bok Jing is a very fun dish to eat because it's like a Vietnamese street food. It's not necessarily something you would eat for like nutritional value. It's something you eat just like for fun. So
eating for fun.
Yeah. So I think today is meant to be a joyous occasion where we're just going to have like a cozy fun time together, full of warmth, full of cheerfulness.
During my last time working with this deck, I realized that the backs of it actually have like these bunnies on them.
The bunny at the bottom.
Bunny at the bottom.
I've seen
and
those
they're all
too.
different. I only just realized this like in the last, I don't know, couple weeks.
I've seen those too.
Yeah. So this is what the guidebook looks like. The creators of this deck went above and beyond because there is the description of the food in Vietnamese here, and there's a description of the food, like literally translated in English. That is really impressive. So for English speakers and non-Vietnamese speakers, like this deck is actually really usable. From the guidebook, it's explaining that bok jing is a simple dish originating from China. It's a familiar snack, breakfast, or late night snack in the Saigon area, as well as some other places. This guidebook does have keywords for each of the tarot cards, like it has keywords for the Page of Wands, but it doesn't always explain like how this food relates to that tarot card.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see like this bok jing correlates to Page of Wands because yada yada yada. You just get an entry on what bok jing is.
Yeah. So there are certain cards where the food does directly correlate to the major or minor arcana. I wouldn't say directly correlates, but it more obviously correlates to the major or minor arcana.
This deck is really colorful. So even if you don't really know what's going on, like even just the sight of all of these things is so stimulating. Oh, I found it.
Okay, you found it. I definitely do agree that in the guidebook, it doesn't make it quite obvious as to why a food was chosen for a specific minor or major arcana, but there are certain cards where like it does seem more obvious.
So like this one is Bánh Trung Thu. This one is bánh that is for the Mid-Autumn Festival.
In Vietnam, this festival is celebrated kind of like as a children's festival. It's a great time for like family to get together and to basically take their kids to like lantern festivals, basically.
Lantern Festival.
Mid-autumn is the harvesting season when people gather to celebrate the harvestings of their crops and such.
So yeah, we have here Bánh Trung Thu, which literally includes mooncakes, and the card here is the moon. So that's a very obvious correlation there. But interestingly, even though this is mooncake and that correlates with the moon, I don't know if Bánh Trung Thu specifically would correlate to the themes or the ideas of the moon, which can be like confusion or, I don't know, returning to your primal self or things like that. So it's interesting. It's an interesting different way to think of the tarot. Here's another card that obviously correlates to the tarot card, the Hanged Man. We literally have dried squid hanging from this street food vendor's cart here. Yeah, those are some examples of the food cards. Again, this is the Măm Tarot, another deck from Vietnam.
Yay!
Okay, so last couple decks here. We saw the Quên Tarot earlier. Now we have its companion deck, the Quên Oracle.
Yeah. This Oracle deck I'm still learning so much about. So there's actually a QR code to the guidebook. I do companion readings between this card and the Quên tarot, but I find that because this one doesn't have like a physical guidebook, I often have to pull out my phone to like scan the code and all that stuff. So even though this deck isn't like, I can't really intuit the meanings, I love looking at the imagery like so much. I like this grandmother one a lot. I also really like this one of like this woman a lot. There's just so much like nostalgia and innocence in this deck.
You know how many oracle decks will have a theme, right? Like
Yeah.
around crystals or around grief or things
Yeah.
like that. What is the theme of the Quên oracle?
I think that the artist pulls so much of their personal life, like memories and lessons they've learned of their youth. This deck does have a sense of like nostalgia in it and also like inner child healing in a sense. So like this card is like inner child. So I think that the theme of this deck is just connecting to the garden of memories that make us who we are.
And looking at the titles of these cards, we have like maybe a keyword or title here, and then we have something in quotes. So for example, this says dazzling, another sunset, winter 2011. What does this mean, Kady?
I don't actually know what like these like keywords mean.
Wait, I asked you because I thought you knew.
No, I don't actually know. There's
Did you
actually a lot about this deck that I don't know about. From what I remember from the Kickstarter, the artist has each card be a snippet from his life. These cards come from a very like personal place of his own personal experience.
So that's maybe where the different seasons and the years come from, right? Just
Yeah.
the different events in his life that way.
Yeah, I think so.
That's really special. What a really special and personal oracle deck. And now you get to have it and use it for your own personal growth.
Yeah.
All right, so again, that was the Quên Oracle, companion deck to the Quên Tarot. And lastly, in Kady's Vietnamese deck collection, we have this deck, which is called Thiên, Nhân Tarot. How did you come across this one, Kady?
Oh, so this one I came across when I was shopping at the Kami Cola store. So Kami Cola is basically a Vietnamese publishing house. They publish tarot decks, they publish graphic novels, prints, all sorts of things, all from local artists. I bought this deck the same time that I bought the Măm Tarot, because both the Măm Tarot and this deck, they're both from Kami Cola, which is based in Hanoi. So I came across this deck with my mother when we were traveling in Hanoi over the summer. Hanoi is a really special city because it's actually the birthplace of my grandmother. So being able to buy this deck in my grandmother's hometown was like really special to me. And this deck in particular highlights a lot of Vietnamese culture, Vietnamese folklores, and the imagery is just so rich. There's lots of imagery of agriculture. There's lots of imagery that shows landmarks in Vietnam, such as One Pillar Temple and like other places. And whenever I look at this card, I feel just like really close to like my ancestral culture. It's very like elemental based. I think there's plenty of tarot decks out there that have their own deck on like being very elemental, but I like that this is very elemental in like the Vietnamese way. And actually each of the minor arcana elements correspond to different regions in Vietnam.
Oh.
So
Also, I noticed that this deck is drawn with a lot of like what feels like traditional Vietnamese symbolism.
yeah.
The fire just feels really Vietnamese drawn. I don't know how to describe it. It's not like I know that much like Vietnamese traditional art, but like the way that these clouds are drawn, it feels very traditional, right?
Yeah.
I could see these like being in a lot of tattoos, honestly. Like a lot of tattoo artists and people, they love like drawing from traditional symbolism or art styles to make their tattoos.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
All the majors have a sort of name on them. So the chariot, we have Den Yom Sop Sung. These are names of famous figures.
Yeah.
Or in some other occasions, maybe locations. So the priestess here is Chùa Thiên Mu. So this temple related to this high priestess.
I've actually been to that temple in Hanoi. You know what? I might be wrong. This temple might actually be in Hue. So don't come for me, Central Region people. I'm learning.
I'm really not well versed in Vietnamese history or Vietnamese like mythology at all. So I really don't recognize any of these locations.
So I'm familiar with this one pillar temple in the Wheel because I actually have been to this one pillar temple in Hanoi. This one actually is in Hanoi. I'm not just guessing. I'm just guessing. And the strength card, this bridge is actually famous in Hoi An.
What a beautiful deck that calls back to Vietnamese traditions and Vietnamese folklore and everything. So that was the latest Vietnamese deck that Kady has added to her collection.
Yeah.
All right.
What's nice, given that this is sort of like a quick video, was that a lot of this stuff was like unscripted.
Yeah.
I may find that revisiting this, I may be like, oh, I made a mistake explaining this thing or that. But I think it's okay to not necessarily be an expert on this thing. I feel like I very much am a student in learning about, you know, my own culture and stuff. That's kind of one of the beautiful things about being a person of the diaspora. Like, it is okay if we're not experts in all of these things. I think it's okay for us to acknowledge, like, our beginner's mind when it comes to discovering these decks. There are plenty of people in Vietnam that love tarot. When I was visiting, like, tarot shops, I could definitely see, like, wow, like, Vietnamese Gen Z and millennials, they're really getting into tarot. I feel like Vietnamese people really like Western tarot deck. Like, they love the Rider-Waite. They love, like, the Vietnamese, like, indie tarot decks. And it tends to actually be more popular than these decks made by Vietnamese people. I feel like Vietnamese people, because they're already surrounded by their own culture, they don't feel a yearning to, like, see these as, like, a thing to, like, pay tribute to the motherland, because they already live in the freaking motherland.
Yeah.
So I was super excited about this in that these would make a great souvenir to remember my trip by, but also this was kind of my own way of kind of exploring and being in touch with the motherland. But my Vietnamese friends that are curious about tarot, or like Vietnamese people that are into tarot, they're excited about these decks, but they're kind of excited in that, oh, it's another deck that is cool along with these Western decks I like. But I feel like me as a Vietnamese American tarot reader, I like these decks because, like, they feel so different from, like, my Western American-made tarot decks. Like, they feel so distinct. They feel so different. They serve, like, a different purpose. Like, they serve the purpose of, like, identity exploration. Someone who was, like, native to that homeland, they don't see as much of that importance of trying to
and it's not novel or exciting.
Exactly. So I did have a friend who, like, I showed these, like, 2 decks to. I showed her this deck too, and, like, she thought, like, they were all cool and stuff.
But she wasn't as, like, sparked with excitement as you were, right?
Yeah.
They'd be like, yeah, this is a regular food deck. Yeah, this is what we eat every day. Why is that so exciting to you? And we're like, because we don't eat these foods every day. We don't know what these mean. Okay, well, that was a quick look at Kady's collection of Vietnamese decks. You can actually buy some of these decks online as well. They do ship internationally, even if you don't live in Vietnam. So I will leave links in the description if you're interested in checking them out for yourself. With that, that is all Kady and I have for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.